Hello, today I'm going to give you a masterclass in how to automate a web form in the browser. We're going to cover things like how to traverse form inputs using a key press, how to select buttons dynamically, and we're going to tackle the dreaded date picker. I'm Alex Barlow, co-founder of Axiom. Let's dive in. First up, something simple, how to pass data through Axiom into a web forms input. This data could come from one of our integrations to Zapier or to Integromat, or the data could come from a Google Sheet. In this example, I'm going to show you the data will come from a Google Sheet. Okay, so I've got a simple Axiom set up on screen, read data from Google Sheet, interact step, and then go to page. Next, I'm going to add a substep, and that will be the substep to enter text. Now, all I need to do is select the input field I want to pass the data to. I press complete. Then I click into the text field. You could hard code data in here, but I'm going to insert the variable from the Google Sheet to pass the data straight from the sheet into the input field. It's as simple as that. Next up is something a little more tricky. Sometimes when you go to automate a web form, you'll notice some inputs, like the mortgage debt here, has got a value pre-entered into it. When you try and attempt to enter text, that value isn't removed. So what can you do about that? Well, you can use a key press to delete that value. Okay, here's how. I'm going to open up Axiom, and before my enter text step, I'm going to add a click. That will put the cursor into the input, so I can then start the key press to delete. Next, I'm going to select another substep. This one's called key press. Now, because I'm not sure where the cursor will land, it could land between the 1 and the 3, or it could land right at the end, but I'm not sure. What I'm going to do when I record my keys is I'm going to use the right arrow to go to the right a bit with the cursor before coming back with the delete to remove the content. Okay, now let's give that a quick run and see what happens. So the bot's going to open up on the desktop runner. I'm just going to drag it into view. Here you can see the bot loading the page. It should shortly click into the mortgage debt here. There it's done, and it's Next up, I'm going to show you how to traverse a web form using the key press. That means instead of having to select which inputs to go and interact with, you can just tab between them, moving from input to input until the form is complete. This is a really handy bit of knowledge and a useful get out of jail card for when selectors fail. Okay, so I'm going to first add a click element just to position the cursor into the input here, but then I'm going to add a cheeky little key press here. So let's search for the substep, key press. I'm going to press record, and I'm just going to press tab once, and I'll stop recording. That will take me to the next field. How do I know that will work? Well, when you're interacting with the web form you want to automate, just try pressing the keyboard. Try pressing tab to see if it will switch. If it's built correctly, then you should be able to navigate all the form elements with just a simple tab. Okay, let's give that a run on the desktop and see if that worked. Just going to drag it into view. Now, you should see what I described. The cursor should click into the mortgage debt input, and then it should tab to the 25. There you can see it's tabbed into the correct field, and then if I added another key press, we could go on to the next, and so on and so on. One last bit to show you. If I then wanted to enter data into the field I've just tabbed into, I can use the enter text and pass a value to it. All I need to do is do not set the selector, and then by default the data will be entered where the cursor is. So just plug in the text, but don't select the field. Okay. Okay, let's wrap this up, raise the skill level, and teach you about how to use custom selectors to choose or click on different buttons within a web form. So this was a question posed by a customer. He wanted to know how he could use Axiom to click on any of these buttons under golfers depending on a value in a Google Sheet. So I showed him how to do that by using a custom selector and passing a value into that custom selector. Okay, so I've got Axiom open here on the right. I've got a click step added. I haven't selected the field because I'm going to use set custom selector. But first of all, I need to use the Chrome inspector to figure out what that selector will be. So I'm going to use the child selector to be able to switch between the different buttons. So first of all, I need to look for a wrapper, a unique wrapper class to find my buttons. And in this case, I found it earlier. And what I did was to do a quick search using the inspector there to check it was unique. And all I can see is some CSS references and the class. So I know it's unique. So I've got the first class. I'm going to start adding it into Axiom by clicking Set Custom Selector. To add a class, type dot and then cut and paste the class in. Next, I'm going to need to figure out the selector of the button. Now, unfortunately, there aren't any unique classes to use on the buttons. They're all pretty much the same. So I'm just going to take the class that is on all of these buttons, JSS75, and add it there. So right now, this custom selector would try and click on all the buttons. I don't want that. So what I do know in the HTML structure, by looking at the HTML structure, is all these buttons are children of this parent. So I can use an nth child selector to click on any of these buttons. The first button would be nth child 1, the second nth child 2, and onwards. So to click different buttons, all I need to do is pass a different value to the nth child selector. And I can store that value in a Google Sheet. In fact, already have. Look at this Google Sheet. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I could perhaps add 5. Now back to the setting up the classes. I'm going to add the nth child. Now all I need to do is pass a number into there. That selector should click on any button. Let's click run and just check it works. I'm just going to bring the desktop runner into view. There you can see it clicked onto any. Okay, so I know that selector works. The final part of this is I just need to pass the value from the Google Sheet. And that's done the standard way we do throughout Axiom by inserting a variable. Now, if I just delete the 1 and insert my cursor to delete it, and I've got the cursor between the brackets, now I'm going to click on Insert Data and insert the variable into my selector and click Save. Now, what should happen is Axiom should loop through, clicking on first any, then 1, then 2, then 3. Okay, let's click Run and see if that works. First of all, it's clicked on any. Next, we should see it click on 1. Two and 3 is already selected. This form can obviously select more than one option in terms of golfer numbers. Okay. That's pretty cool. So you can apply that to anything. You can use custom selectors for any browser automation and pass values through from a sheet or from an API via a webhook. That's a pretty useful lesson to learn and gives you some good abilities to further extend your bots. Next up is the date picker. This is the tough one. This is ninja level stuff. I'm not going to lie to you. Automating date pickers is hard. The primary reason why is because, to be honest, none of them are built the same way. There isn't one standard way a date picker is built. So you have to learn several techniques and see which one is easiest to implement. I'm going to take you first through the first technique I use to automate date pickers. Okay, so the first technique my default go-to is using the actual URL of the form. Now, modern web apps don't tend to use the URLs. It's the older websites that do this. So you're going to need to check. This method may work, it may not. Okay, so in this example, you can see the date is actually contained in the string within the URL. So I can just cut that out and replace it, like I showed you earlier, with a custom value. Pretty much the same way I did with the custom selectors, but in the go-to field. I've already got a Google Sheet set up with different dates in, and I'm going to show you quickly how to do this. Okay, so I'm going to open Axiom, and I'm going to go straight to the go-to page. I'm going to look for the date. Now I need to select between the equals and that ampersand. Make sure I delete that correctly or the URL will break. And I'm going to insert the data token. The preview hasn't updated, but it will have changed the data. Let me just check there. We're just going to okay, that's updated the preview. And for just to be, let's get it in between there. Okay, the date's going to go in. Okay, I'm going to click save, press confirm. I'm going to run it and see if that worked. Okay. Now we should see the date change as the bot loops. There you can see the string has changed and the page reloads, and you can see here, I'll just move it again, the date pickers move date. So that's the first way which you can overcome the barrier, and it is a barrier automating date pickers. Okay. Now, the next possible way to try and automate date picker is by using a CSS class and passing a custom variable through it that changes to the date. Let me show you an example of this. Okay, so I've already set up my spreadsheet with a series of different, here we go, different dates in. Now tag back to this calendar. I'm going to inspect this little calendar or date picker here, and let's see if it's got distinct or unique attributes that say it's a date, and it has. Look here, we've got an attribute, HTML attribute, which actually contains the date. So I can build a custom class around that. Okay, so I'm going to open up my click element, and I'm going to paste that in here, and I'm going to start to edit it to use this attribute CSS selector. Next, I just need to add a CSS class to the front of that. And we're just going to use this class because the attribute should make it unique enough to find the button. Now I need to add a little dot to tell Axiom that it's a CSS class. Okay, so that should be enough to click on the 9th of May. At the moment it's on the 5th, so I'm going to save the selector. I'm going to click run. on the desktop. We should see the calendar open. And then I want to see it click onto the 9th. Give it a moment, let the click action kick in. And there we go, it's clicked onto the 9th. So now if I wanted to change the date, I can actually pass the variable like we did with the custom class into this selector as well. So I'm just going to delete the date here and insert the data. Actually going to need different format dates because that's not how I think they format them. Let me just check. There we go. So I'm just going to check. That wouldn't have worked. So I'm going to change the date format inside the sheet. And we should see this count down from '26 to the 25th. Now I'm just going to do those 3, so there'll be 3 loops. And let me just tab back and make sure we got the data inserted. We have. I'm just going to, don't really need to update this, but I'm just going to make sure it updates. There we go. Got the URL is correct. Set the custom selector. Now I'll just demonstrate reinserting it in between the speech marks, quote marks. Click save. Okay, so now the bot should loop through a series of different dates. Let me click save and give it a go. And there you go, it's clicked on the 27th. We should see it this time click onto the 26th. And that's how you can automate a date picker using CSS and variables stored in a Google Sheet. Awesome. Okay, now the easiest way to automate a date picker. And fingers crossed, every date picker you need to automate has the input field where you can just enter the date straight into it. Okay, I'm just going to open up the test axiom I've been using. I'm going to swap that for, you may need a click element. Let me just look. So here, instead of using the calendar, I can just cut and paste a date. But it does have a date pre-populated. So when I click into it, I may want to delete that date before I enter the new one. It's also handy to click on the calendar just to check the date format because they vary from country to country, and depending on the form or the web form you're submitting a date into, it may not be able to. It could be an American form and it couldn't handle British dates, how we format them, because they're completely different. Okay, let me just show you how to do this. So first of all, I'm going to probably add a click element and just click into that selector, into the input. Then I'm going to do the method I showed you earlier and key press. I'm just going to do some deletes. And then press key, click, and then I'm just going to add an enter text. I'm not going to set the selector because the cursor is already in the correct position. I'm just going to click save, and that should enter my date into the form. Let's give it a run on the desktop and see what happens. Okay, so the desktop runner is opening up. Give it a few seconds. Okay, I've done something silly there. I haven't changed the URL out of this test axiom, so I'm just going to grab the correct URL, the National Rail link, and stop that bot, click save, and then I'm going to run it again, this time in the cloud. I've clicked on the cloud. Now the cloud is kicking into gear. So we should see the bot click into the today. It has. It should click the delete and paste the new value in. It's as simple as that. So if every date picker is easy as that and built that way, that would be brilliant. Okay, I've shown you 3 simple ways to automate, or 3 ways you can indeed automate a date picker. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Automating date pickers can be a challenge. Now, there's one other method you could try. If you're really good at JavaScript, we do have a custom code box. Obviously, that's not going to be everyone's skill set. You can simply add a JavaScript box and use JS to then automate your date picker. But if you don't have those skills, there is another way. Reach out to us on our support page here, Axiom.ai/customer-support, because we really do respond within 48 hours of working days, and we try and do that as quickly as possible. And you'll get a response from one of the co-founders of Axiom. Either myself, Alex, Yasir, or Simon will be in touch, and if we can help you, we will. Thank you. Now let me finally show you how to automate select lists or drop downs. They're a different form element that you'll probably have to automate and interact with. So here's an example, and this just sets time. Now we've got a special step to do this, and you can pass data through that step, much like we've done with the custom selectors. So I'm going to open up the select list here. I'm just going to choose make sure we've got the right URL. Now I'm going to select the list, press complete. Now let me try passing a value through it to make sure it works before we try passing data from a sheet. I'm going to click save. And now I'm going to run the bot on the desktop. Now we should see the bot interact and enter a different value. Just waiting for all the ads to load in before we can interact with the page. There we go. And the value has changed. Awesome. So that's how you automate the select list. That's the end of the masterclass. I hope it's been helpful and boosted your browser automation skills and knowledge. If you need to learn more, or you're interested in learning more and boosting your new superpowers, why not visit the Axiom Academy you can see on screen, academy.axiom.ai, where you can learn to do much more than just automate a web form. And we're constantly building this academy up. And of course, if you do get stuck, use our support form at axiom.ai/customer-support. And all you need to do is answer a couple of questions. It's helpful if you submit the video, but you don't have to, but it helps us know where you're stuck and it helps us solve the problems quicker. But we're there to support you. One of the co-founders will in fact be in touch to help you. That's myself, Alex, Yasir, and Simon. Thank you.